Hey everyone! So not long ago, I made my very first region review of Johto. And that video exceeded all of the expectations that I had for it. The reception for that video was so amazing, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribed and supported me to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. So the new goal, I guess, is 5K. Can we do it? Anyway, y'all really do make this process worthwhile, and I can't thank you enough for your support. But today, I'm gonna be talking about Johto. And I gotta tell ya, this review was a really fun process. However, it was pretty hefty, okay? It was very hefty. And so, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to split the Johto region review up into 2 parts. Because this review is basically double the size of the Johto region review. And I wanted to make sure that you guys had something to watch from me, because if I just left it as one big gigantic long video, y'all wouldn't be getting anything from me for quite a while longer, and I still want to make sure that you have something to watch. So this is only going to be part 1 of the Johto region review. Make sure that you stay tuned for part 2, okay? I'm Sabrina, and you're watching Saffron City TV. Welcome back everyone. So what is it exactly that makes a Pokemon region enjoyable and memorable? Well, I've got a list of criteria that delineates exactly what makes a region enjoyable in my opinion. Speaking of my opinion, I'm going to try to be as objective as humanly possible with this review. However, I am only human, so some subjectivity will have to be involved, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum. So, I've got some very important housekeeping matters we need to get out of the way first. If you've seen the Johto region review, I highly suggest that you stay tuned for this part, because I am changing the review structure quite a bit. And it's going to be a little bit different from the Johto region review, but in good ways. I like to think of this as an improvement. And if you haven't seen the Johto region review, you're more than welcome to stick along for this. It might help explain kind of some of the things that I do. But if you haven't seen the Johto region review, it will be in the cards at the end of this video, so make sure you check that one out. First things first, let's talk about the scoring system. Just like the Johto review, the lowest score a category can receive is a 1 and the highest score is a 5. However, from this point on, I'll be scoring each generation of the game separately. So for this review, Gold, Silver, and Crystal in Generation 2 will get their own score, and HeartGold and SoulSilver in Generation 4 will get their score separately. The official score for the category as a whole will be the midpoint between the 2 scores, so if Gen 2 gets a score of 1 and Gen 4 gets a score of 3, then the final score for the category will be 2. If that's confusing at all, don't worry, it'll make much more sense when you see the scoring process in action in the video. Secondly, you may have noticed that in my Johto region review that there wasn't any footage of Gen 1. Well, I got you covered this time. For this review, I played through Pokemon Crystal and Pokemon HeartGold from start to finish to really get a good feel of the differences. Why Crystal instead of Gold or Silver? Because Crystal is the 3rd version and it has more to offer, and I wanted to play as Chris, the first female playable character introduced in the games. And don't worry, I've played plenty of Gold and Silver in the past and will be considering everything that they have to offer as well. Gold, Silver, and Crystal are all in Johto after all, and I want to make sure that the region gets reviewed in the best possible light. Also, I don't separate version-exclusive content anyway. If it occurs in Johto, then Johto as a whole gets points for it. Therefore, I'm technically condensing Gold, Silver, and Crystal into a singular Gen 2 Johto experience. This goes for HeartGold and SoulSilver as well. Once again, this will make more sense in the review. Thirdly, a few of the categories have changed. Region design has been changed to region design and biome diversity, as I feel this clarifies what is being reviewed in the category. Next, route and cave design and aesthetic has been changed to include forests and special interiors. Forests are pretty self-explanatory, but I noticed that in my Johto region review, I didn't take the Viridian Forest into account, and I view that as a massive missed opportunity. Special interiors are a little more nuanced though. Special interiors refers to places that are within structures and buildings that have Pokemon encounters in them and act similarly to the caves, routes, and forests. Special interiors does not refer to people's houses, facilities, or buildings that don't have Pokemon encounters and or don't imply exploration. For example, Bill's Sea Cottage on Route 25 in Johto does not count as a special interior, but the power plant on Route 10 does. Finally, music and ambiance has been changed to music and sound design, as I no longer feel that ambiance specifically should hold enough weight to influence the score of a category. All of that being said, I am considering revisiting my review of Johto with these changes applied, but that will be way further down the line. However, I do think that it's important that Johto does receive a re-review later on. And just on one final note before we really get into this review, please understand that I am not taking any information about the region that is not found in the games themselves into account for scoring purposes. And when I say the games themselves, I'm referring specifically to the games where the region being reviewed is the featured region of the game. I am going to be very clear here. Information about Johto and its characters found in the anime will not be considered in this review. Information about Johto and its characters found in Pokemon Masters EX will not be considered in this review. Information and insight that the game designers provided in interviews will not be considered in this review unless it specifically pertains to the region itself. In other words, I don't care if they had intentions to add 50 more Pokemon or wanted to include the Battle Frontier but just couldn't due to time constraints. To put it as bluntly as possible, if you cannot experience it while you are in the region itself, then the region doesn't get points for it. And here's the deal. I may decide to include some facts about the games that aren't included in the games themselves, like how Johto was designed to be based on the Kansai region of Japan. That information isn't available in the games, but that fact is inextricably linked to the region itself, and it does not affect its overall score. All that being said, I greatly value y'all's input and appreciate the respectful discussions we have here. Your perspectives and comments have inspired me to make these changes to improve my content. However, in addition, I would like to point out that in a few cases, some viewers have rightly corrected my mistakes. For example, in the Johto region review, some of you have pointed out that gold is often associated with psychic themes, making Sabrina a fitting gym leader for Saffron City. Another interesting cultural insight was that in Asian countries, it's common for Western military personnel to reside in port cities, which justifies Lieutenant Surge's placement in Vermilion City. This type of input opens up my mind to new perspectives, and I genuinely appreciate it. And please, don't hesitate to correct me if I make factual errors, as I want to make my videos as accurate as possible, and I'm only one person, so I'm bound to make mistakes here and there. So please feel free to continue sharing your perspectives, and I appreciate the respectful and insightful discourse I get to have with all of you. Anyway, I believe that covers all of the housekeeping matters, so let's get into the review. To recap, the categories of the region that I will be reviewing will be region design and biome diversity, town and city design and aesthetic, routes, caves, forests, and special interiors, traversability and transportation, exploratory incentives, culture, lore, and immersion, Pokemon diversity, gym leaders, Elite Four and trainer classes, naturally occurring phenomena, and music and sound design. From this point moving forward, you will hear me refer to Gold, Silver, and Crystal as GSC or Gen 2, and HeartGold and SoulSilver as HGSS or Gen 4, simply to make it less wordy on myself. And while Kanto is explorable in both of these generations, I won't be covering any Kanto content unless it specifically relates to Johto. I've already done an entire review of Kanto, so it will be mentioned very sparingly in this review. And before we truly begin, I think it's important to remember that no matter what I say in this video, you are permitted and entitled to love or hate a region for whatever reason you deem necessary, and don't let this review sway your opinion too much. I simply hope that you enjoy this video. So, let's get into the review. Johto. Ah, Johto. I remember it like it was yesterday, strolling down the streets of Violet City, handing some apricorns over to Kurt so he can craft me some special Pokeballs, participating in the bug catching contest in National Park, carefully maneuvering around the broken pillars and scorched debris of the burned tower, chasing down the roaming legendary Pokemon, being disoriented by the whirlpools impeding my journey to Olivine, and scaling the unnerving bell tower. Ah, such nostalgia. Johto is based on the Kansai region of Japan. In contrast to the modern Kanto region, Kansai is deeply rooted in history and renowned for its historic temples, shrines, palaces, gardens, and architectural heritage. This influence is very evident in the Johto region as it displays a historic and traditional Japanese atmosphere, especially in places like Ecruteak City, Azalea Town, Violet City, Mahogany Town, and Blackthorn City. Johto is the second region ever created and made its debut with the release of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and later Crystal. These games have since been remade with the release of Pokemon HeartGold and SoulSilver, where Johto has been reimagined for the DS era with graphical changes, amongst other impactful improvements. So let's start this review off by going over its most basic elements. Region design and biome diversity. Johto's themes are characterized by its emphasis on tradition, history, culture, and a deep appreciation for nature and a simpler way of life, while also harmonizing with contrasting elements of modernization. Johto is located west of Kanto, east of Hoenn, and southwest of Sinnoh, surrounded entirely by ocean to the south. Johto's geography somewhat resembles the letter M, with Cyanwood City positioned in the far west, Ecruteak, Goldenrod, and Azalea Town situated in the center of the region, and Blackthorn, Newbark, and the Indigo Plateau found in the easternmost part of Johto. Similar to its Kanto neighbor, Johto also has a temperate climate, albeit slightly wetter. While the region severely lacks in biome diversity in Gen 2, in Gen 4 this aspect has been slightly improved upon, but regardless, Johto excels in developing and expanding upon the biomes that it does feature. Johto is also significantly more rural than its more urban-centric Kanto neighbor. And the reason I keep mentioning Kanto is because these two regions share a common connection through the mountainous Indigo Plateau, where both regions host their Elite Four and Pokemon League champion. Johto also sports another mountain, Mount Silver, to the west of the Indigo Plateau and Victory Road. Johto is comprised mostly of low-lying grasslands that are heavily forested and dotted with many ponds and small lakes. There is one very large lake, however, being the Lake of Rage, north of Mahogany Town. Johto has a set of 4 islands, known as the Whirl Islands to the west, and there's also the Ruins of Elf that are situated in a somewhat sandy area as well. Most of Johto's cities and towns are quite distant from each other and are generally separated by forests, large parks, long routes, caves, and the ocean, making the region feel quite expansive and spread out, even though the region isn't actually that large. Let's talk about the caves, and guess what? Johto also loves its numerous caves. This is where we get into the differences between the Gen 2 and Gen 4 games. In GSC, there are 8 different caves, being the Dark Cave, Dragon's Den, Ice Path, Mount Mortar, Mount Silver, Slowpoke Well, Union Cave, and the Whirl Islands. That's a lot of caves, y'all. And you can go ahead and slap 2 extra caves, being Cliff Cave and Cliff Edge Gate in HGSS, for a whopping total of 10 freaking caves. I hope y'all really freaking enjoy spelunking. The good news is that the Icy Ice Path offers some additional biome diversity to the region, and a lot of the other caves have bodies of water and even waterfalls in them. The interesting thing about Gen 4 is that Cyanwood City houses Cliff Edge Gate, which serves as a gateway to Route 47. It's on this route that you'll need to traverse Cliff Cave in order to reach the newly constructed Safari Zone northwest of Cyanwood. However, the most interesting part about the Safari Zone is that it definitely offers some biome diversity to the region, as the player is able to change, rearrange, and customize the zones in the Safari Zone in order to catch a variety of Pokemon that would be found in the biome of the zone depending on how the zone is decorated. The different zones consist of plains, meadow, savanna, peak, rocky beach, wetland, forest, swamp, marshland, wasteland, mountain, and desert. This additional biome diversity adds some excitement to the Gen 4 games. It gives Johto a little more flavor, in my opinion. The Safari Zone is unfortunately unavailable in Generation 2 in both Johto and Kanto. But speaking of Gen 4 adding some biome diversity to the games, Mount Silver is now covered in snow, and I would consider this area to be a taiga. Now, in the real world, taigas are considered to be a forest of coniferous trees in a very cold climate with lots of snow in the colder months. Granted, trees in HeartGold and SoulSilver in this area are the same as the rest of the region, and I'm not sure they're technically considered to be coniferous, but we're splitting hairs right now, aren't we? I'm gonna go ahead and just give Gen 4 credit for including this biome. Not only that, but HeartGold and SoulSilver also further expanded upon the region slightly with the addition of the GTS being added onto the western side of Goldenrod City and the Pokeathlon Dome west of Route 35, accessible via the Gateway building leading to National Park. And this was a great addition from Gen 4 because this new place allows the player to take part in athletic competitions with their Pokemon to win medals and receive points that can be exchanged for prizes. I have spent countless hours at the Pokeathlon Dome, and it can be a really nice break from the standard gameplay. For region design and biome diversity, I'd have to give Generation 2 a score of 3.5. Generation 4 gets a score of 4.5, resulting in a final score of 4 for Johto in total. I truly do think that Johto capitalizes on its themes, and they're very evident in this region, regardless of which generation of games you're playing. The spread out layout of the region really emphasizes its rural feel, and the cities of Johto aren't placed in such a way that is at all reductive to its traditional countryside charm. Everything feels as if it's in its rightful place here in Johto. The traditional Japanese architecture of Ecruteak City and Azalea Town harmonizes with the busy and bustling feel of the modern Goldenrod City because neither of them feel too close together or clash with each other's themes due to their lack of proximity. And the fact that the more modern Kanto is available to explore in both Gen 2 and Gen 4 is also quite a bonus. However, while Johto as a whole has more of a wetland feel to it compared to its Kanto neighbor, it is still quite evident that Johto suffers from a lack of inherent biome diversity as well. And though the Safari Zone in Gen 4 provides a slice of improvement, many of the biomes found there are just not available outside of that one small portion of the region. On the other hand, the Ilex Forest really feels like an expansive forest. The rest of Johto also feels very forested with tons of trees, and there's even a few variants of trees here as well. In Gen 4, the Lake of Rage really feels a bit swampy as you surf around the northern side of the wooded lake. National Park really highlights the beauty of the grasslands, the mountains feel towering and massive, and the ruins of Alph really feel ancient. Johto is firing on all cylinders when it comes to the biomes of the region, and though the diversity may be lacking, the attention to detail is certainly evident with what is available. And that's why Gen 2 gets a score of 3.5. I think that if there was slightly more biome diversity, it really could have taken the score up a notch. If Game Freak can make a savanna in the Safari Zone in Gen 1, I'm sure with the new color palette of Gen 2, there could have been a creative opportunity to add at least one more biome to the region. However, Gen 4 improves upon the few things that Johto is lacking by adding the Safari Zone with its many available small biomes, plus the addition of the taiga on Mount Silver. However, I still can't justify giving it a perfect score of 5 because the addition of the taiga is in an area that is unavailable until you've received all 8 gym badges in Johto, you've defeated the Elite Four and the champion, and received all 8 gym badges from Kanto as well. That's a whole lot of game to play through to experience a tiny bit of a new biome. If they would have just added a little bit more snow to, say, Blackthorn City or the routes surrounding the ice path, I could have justified giving Gen 4 a perfect score of 5. But I definitely think Gen 4 Johto still deserves the half point for Mount Silver's taiga regardless. Therefore, I think Johto as a whole deserves its delightful overall score of 4. Hi, I know I am interrupting your regularly scheduled programming, but I just want to say thank you so much for getting to this far into the review. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, why not like the video? It helps me out, it really goes a long way. And if you'd like to see more content like this from me, make sure you subscribe. My goal right now is to get to 5K subscribers, and if you want to help me reach that goal, please do subscribe. Also, don't forget to tap that bell icon because I upload pretty randomly. And don't forget, this is only part 1 of the Johto region review. If you want to be notified when part 2 comes out, hitting that bell icon will help you out. Anyway, I'm going to stop my jibber jabbering and let's get back to the video. Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off with the next category. Town and city, design, and aesthetic. One could argue that Johto's towns and cities are just as iconic and memorable as those from Kanto. Johto's got New Bark Town, Cherry Grove City, Violet City, Azalea Town, Goldenrod, Ecruteak, Olivine, and Cyanwood City, Mahogany Town, and Blackthorn City. Each of these places is brimming with originality and uniqueness, and they're all either named after plants or are associated with nature. The distinction between Johto's rural way of life and Kanto's urbanized cities becomes evident when we take a closer look at several of Johto's own cities and towns, such as Blackthorn, Cyanwood, New Bark, and Cherry Grove. These towns are notably positioned at a considerable distance from the region's central and most densely populated hub, which in Johto is Goldenrod City. Johto effectively strikes a balance between its rural, historic, and traditional themes and its themes of modernization via this intentional geographical arrangement. It's important to mention that the concept of following Pokemon was also introduced in Gen 4. Sometimes these Pokemon exhibit location-specific behaviors when players interact with them, enhancing the immersive experience of these places and adding a charming and distinctive ambiance to the towns and cities. While I won't delve into every possible interaction between Pokemon and players, as that would take forever, I'll highlight those that contribute extra depth to the unique character of certain cities and towns. Most of Johto's cities and towns have exciting things to do and remarkable aspects to them. New Bark Town is described in the games as winds of a new beginning, a town where the wind blows and tells of impending change. This is where the player lives, the player's friendly rival lives, and in Gen 4, it's even where Professor Elm lives, as he and his family reside in what I assume to be an apartment above his laboratory situated in the western side of town. And while the player's unfriendly rival, Silver, does not live here, it is where the player can have their initial interaction with him, as he can be seen peeking into the window of the laboratory on the side of the building before the player visits Mr. Pokemon's house. In HeartGold and SoulSilver, the theme of wind is more apparent due to the weather generally being windy here, and there are now windmills situated next to every home in town. When the player interacts with their Pokemon in New Bark Town, they will often stretch out, relax, become happy, and feel nice and sleepy and begin dozing off. That is so freaking cute, it makes me want to scream. Next, we're going to head west to Cherry Grove City, described in the games as the City of Fragrant Flowers, or a city where you can smell small flowers and a sea breeze. There are lots of flowers with pink or purple hues in this town. Cherry Grove is located near the ocean and has a small beach on its western side. I must say, there isn't much to do in Cherry Grove other than take a tour of the city and receive a map card and the running shoes from the tour guide depending on which generation of the games you're playing. This is also where the player has their first battle with Silver. Otherwise, there really isn't any reason to revisit this place until you've received the HMs for Surf and Rock Climb to obtain some items later on. Outside of that, Cherry Grove is nothing but a pretty place to pass through. When the player interacts with their Pokemon in Cherry Grove City, the Pokemon notes that it smells the scent of flowers here. Following Cherry Grove, we're going to head northeast to Violet City. This place is described in the games as the City of Nostalgic Scents. The old village is still surrounded by trees and other scenery. Violet City is also home to the first gym that the player can challenge in the games. The Pokemon School is also located here north of the Pokemon Center. And in Generation 4, the pathways are adorned with stone pavements, evoking a sense of antiquity and historical charm. But the most intriguing aspect of Violet City lies nestled amongst the trees on the northern side of town, separated by a small lake in Sprout Tower. This towering pagoda is managed by devoted monks who both train their Pokemon within its walls and impart the lesson of mutual coexistence through cooperation to the tower's visitors. They mainly train Pokemon like Bellsprout and Hoot Hoot, potentially to pay homage to the tower's history. In Generation 4, in the Pokemon Center, you can meet an interesting character, Primo, who will ask the player to give their opinion of him, and if the player gives him a specific set of phrases, he will reward the player with different PC wallpapers and potentially 3 different eggs that will hatch into either a Slugma, a Wooper, or a Mareep. A juggler in town will trade you berries for your different colored shards, and the players following Pokemon will have cute responses in the school and in the house where a girl has nicknamed her Pidgey Strawberry. Next, we are going to make our way southeast to Azalea Town, described in the games as living happily with Pokemon, a town where people and Pokemon live together in simple harmony. On the eastern side of town is the Slowpoke Well, which may seem like a small structure, but it holds a significant importance for Azalea Town. The townspeople hold Slowpoke in the highest regard, and these amiable Pokemon make their home inside this underground well. When the player initially enters town, the infamous Team Rocket is blocking the entrance to the well and are there to harvest Slowpoke tails from the innocent Slowpoke that reside there. Once the player defeats Team Rocket and they vacate the area, Slowpoke make their return to Azalea Town and can be found relaxing amongst the residents. In the northwestern part of town, you'll find Kurt's house, a craftsman who makes Pokeballs from apricorns. He also assists in the player's takedown of Team Rocket, but hurts his back in the process.
I've fallen, and I can't get up!
Poor guy, justice for Kurt. To the right of the gym is the charcoal kiln, where a man and his son produce charcoal and gather the wood needed to make charcoal from the Ilex forest using Farfetch'd who know the HM for cut. This charcoal is then sold at the local Pokemart for a fairly high price. As a matter of fact, in the Gen 4 games, stacks of wood can be found near their house and Kurt's house, and this suggests to me that the harvesting of lumber is integral to the town's economy. When the player interacts with their following Pokemon, it'll occasionally catch the scent of smoke. After Azalea Town, we're going to trek through the Ilex Forest and make our way to Goldenrod City. This place is described in the games as a happening big city, a developing city where people and Pokemon come and go as they like. And the festive city of opulent charm. There is a ton to do in Goldenrod City. Let's first talk about the department store, one of the largest buildings in Johto. Here, you can purchase a large variety of items and TMs, and in Gen 4, you can play a daily raffle with the different prizes that change daily like berries, unique Pokeballs, and TMs. In Pokemon Crystal specifically, on the top floor of the department store, there is an additional flight of stairs that will take you to the rooftop lookout, where Camper Todd occasionally holds a rooftop sale. In all generations of Johto, there's a basement level to the department store that is connected to the Goldenrod Tunnel. The Goldenrod Tunnel is an underground shopping district with multiple ways to access it inside of the city. The vendors here provide a variety of goods and services depending on the day of the week or the time of day. Littering and loitering is also a thing down here. In Gen 4, there is also a photo studio down here where you can dress up your Pokemon and take pictures with them. Another important place in Goldenrod is the Game Corner. In Gen 2, we back in Vegas, baby. This is where you can really put that childhood gambling addiction to work, honey. You can squander your life savings here on the slots in hopes that you hit a few jackpots and exchange your winnings for prize Pokemon or TMs. In Gen 4, the Game Corner has been changed to more of a tabletop arcade-style game that doesn't require too much gambling. It's more of a math and probability game called Voltorb Flip, which oddly enough is just as addicting. Another really awesome place in Goldenrod is the bike shop, and you want to know what makes this place so cool? The owner will give you a bike to ride around for free. But we gotta talk about this fool, okay? He's actually used to own the bike shop in Cerulean City. You know, the one that sells Aston Martin bicycles at $1 million Pokedollars a pop? Though some of y'all have a cool theory that he's actually selling motorcycles due to the high prices, but this one is actually a bike shop, so I gotta kinda go based on in-game information. Well, he used to own that business in Kanto and moved it to Goldenrod City. Seems like the people of Johto are smart with their money because nobody is buying his bicycles at those bull honky prices, and his business is now failing. As it rightfully should, because this guy was straight up scamming folks in Kanto. So, what does he do? He gives you a bike for free in exchange for free advertising. And you know what? All is forgiven, buddy. Must have been a hard lesson learned. He must have really been taken to court when he filed the case of fuck around if you find out. Anyway, moving on to the next major structure in the city, the Goldenrod Radio Tower. This tower serves as Johto's primary Pokegear broadcast hub. An antenna atop the tower transmits a variety of radio programs, and I'll put them up on the screen now if you'd like to take a look at them. The player can listen to these programs on their Pokegear. Unfortunately, Team Rocket gets up to some shenanigans here too, and you won't be able to listen to your favorite radio stations while they're here. There's also the magnet train station in Goldenrod, which will transport the player to and from Saffron City and Kanto. There is a flower shop here in town, and the lady that runs the shop will give the player the squirt bottle after defeating Whitney at the Goldenrod Gym. This watering can be used to dispatch the Sudowoodo blocking the path that connects the routes between Ecruteak, Violet, and Goldenrod City. In Gen 4, it can be used to grow berries in the berry pots given to you from the ladies at the flower shop, who will then also sell the player mulch. In Pokemon Crystal, the Pokemon Center has been expanded into the Pokemon Communication Center, which I won't get into the weeds about here, just know it's a little different in Crystal. Johto's Name Rater lives in the northern part of the city. There's a woman in the east of the city who can tell you the friendship level of your Pokemon. And then there's Bill's house. The creator of the PC system is also located in western Goldenrod. Finally, HGSS has added the global terminal to the western side of the city, which provides a variety of service to players with a Wi-Fi connection. However, Nintendo has since discontinued this service. Well, that covers basically all of the major features of Goldenrod. See what I mean? This place is absolutely jam-packed with content. The players following Pokemon will also have a variety of interactions depending on where the player is at in the city. Anyway, let's travel north towards Ecruteak City, described in the games as a historical city, a city that even now bears the marks of its history, and a historical city where the past meets the present. Ecruteak stands out as one of Johto's most unforgettable locations. This beautiful city draws its inspiration from traditional Japanese architecture, reflected in its homes and accentuated by the presence of the brass and bell towers. The latter, known as the Tin Tower in Generation 2, nestled within the city's surrounding forest. Let's not forget the Ecruteak Dance Theater, where the Kimono Girls perform in both dance and battle. There is a ton of history to Ecruteak City, and many legends were born in this place. One of the most fascinating parts of Ecruteak is the Burned Tower, formerly known as the Brass Tower before it was struck by lightning and set ablaze. The remains of this tower still stand in the northern side of the city, and there's a lot to say about this place that will be covered later on in the review. On the other hand, hidden amongst the trees behind the city lies the Brass Tower's twin, the Bell Tower. This tower was formerly referred to as the Tin Tower in Generation 2, and its silvery tones contrasted with the golden tones of its brass sister. The imagery here went well with the themes of the games, gold and silver, you know? However, the name was changed to the Bell Tower in Generation 4, and I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunity here to maintain the interesting sisterhood of these towers. The history of the Bell Tower will be covered more thoroughly later in this review. But there's a place in Ecruteak that is probably one of the most peaceful and beautiful places to visit in Johto, and to me, this place would be the Bell Chime Trail. Technically, this place is considered to be separate from Ecruteak in Generation 4, but in Gen 2, this place was not differentiated from the city and was part of the town's map. However, in my personal opinion, I like to think of the Bell Chime Trail as part of Ecruteak, since the Bell Tower is technically supposed to be part of the city as well. Regardless, in Gen 4, this place is absolutely stunning with its vibrant hues of fiery oranges and yellows, really packing a visual punch with its autumnal vibes. And while the Bell/Tin Tower is certainly amazing, it's not easily accessible. You've got to pass through the barrier station in order to get there, and there are 3 sages here, known as the Wise Trio, who will deny the player entry unless they are deemed worthy to enter the sacred grounds. Next, we'll take the western routes and head south to Olivine City. This city is described in the games as the port city with sea breezes, a city where you can hear the melody of the sea, and the port closest to foreign lands. Renowned as a bustling port city, Olivine houses the Glitter Lighthouse. This lighthouse serves as a crucial beacon directing ships like the SS Aqua to the harbor. The port here in the southern side of the city allows the player to take the SS Aqua to Vermilion City and Kanto depending on the day of the week, but it absolutely relies on the lighthouse to ensure its safe arrival back at the port. The Glitter Lighthouse is illuminated by an Ampharos named Amphi, a little friend of the gym leader Jasmine. Poor Amphi grows ill, and the player is tasked with fetching some special medicine from Cyanwood City in order to restore Amphi back to good health so that it may continue to serve as the city's very important beacon of light. In Gen 4, it is suggested that the SS Aqua can also make trips to Sinnoh, though this isn't possible in the games, so there's that. Finally, there's the Olivine Cafe, which is a quaint little restaurant where sailors come to chow down and rest up after a long voyage at sea. This little place prides itself on its hefty menu, and the sailors here sure do appreciate it, as one guy nearly chokes to death after not fully chewing his food. What a magoo. Now, let's go ahead and head further west across the sea to Cyanwood City, described in the games as a port of crashing waves, a beachside city that has benefited greatly from the sea, and a port surrounded by rough seas. This city is situated in the westernmost part of Johto and stands apart from the rest of the region. Its isolation is marked by the presence of the Whirl Islands and the treacherous waters plagued by the swirling whirlpools between Cyanwood and Olivine. There is a photo studio here. There's also a guy named Kirk here, and this poor fellow was straight up bullied by the player's unfriendly rival Silver, who stole one of his Pokemon. Y'all, this guy is so terrified that Silver will strike again that he basically begs you to watch over his companion Shucky the Shuckle for a while. Psst, if you know, comment below, give Shucky his moment. If you raise Shucky's friendship level high enough, Kirk will allow Shucky to stay by your side. But if y'all be disrespecting Shucky over here, he'll ask that you give him back. And I don't blame him, y'all better put some speck on Shucky's good name. If you refuse to return the Shuck, Kirk will accuse you of being a thief. And don't mind me, I stand with Kirk. Another important place here in Cyanwood is the Cyanwood Pharmacy, where the player will receive the special medicine that will heal Amphi back in Olivine. The pharmacy here also sells a few healing items since there isn't a Pokemart in this town. Once you defeat the gym leader Chuck, you'll be able to use Fly for fast travel around the region. Exclusive to Pokemon Crystal is the Pokemon Seer's house, and she'll tell you when, where, and at which level the Pokemon in your party were caught. In HeartGold and SoulSilver, Cyanwood now provides access to Cliff Edge Gate. This place essentially leads the player to the Safari Zone now available in Gen 4 via a few routes in Cliff Cave. Not to mention, you can encounter a legendary Pokemon in this city. Next, we're going to backtrack all the way to Ecruteak and northeast to Mahogany Town, south of the Lake of Rage. This town is described in the games as Home of the Ninja, a town with a suspicious air to it. It's a hiding place for ninjas.
Don't go ninja, nobody don't need ninja, alrighty?
This place was once home to a group of ninjas who later transformed it into Team Rocket's headquarters. Despite its tumultuous history, Mahogany is a tranquil and laid-back town. Now, there isn't a Pokemart here. Instead, there's, quote, just a souvenir shop, unquote, that serves as Team Rocket's base of operations. Not only that, but in Gen 2, the shady guy that runs the souvenir shop sells Slowpoke tails for 9,800 Poke apiece. Disgusting. This guy deserves way worse than what he gets. But yeah, the criminal organization that once ruled supreme in Kanto is now trying their hand at a resurgence in Johto and have made themselves cozy here, hiding beneath Mahogany Town. Madness. Team Rocket uses this hideout as a power source for transmitting high-frequency sound waves which disrupt the Pokemon in Mahogany Town, the Lake of Rage, and the nearby areas, causing disturbances in their evolution patterns. These waves also explain why the red Gyarados at the Lake of Rage is so enraged. The player, along with the regional champion Lance, joined forces to confront the Team Rocket executives and defeat the Electrode powering the generator here. After the defeat of Team Rocket, the shady souvenir shop was repurposed into a quaint little store managed by an elderly woman. Outside of the gym located here, there really isn't much else to do in Mahogany Town. It's essentially a charming and rural place with a dark secret connected to the Lake of Rage. Finally, we're going to trek further east through the ice path, all the way to Blackthorn City. This place is described in the games as a quiet mountain retreat, a mysterious mountain village cut into a rock face. To the left of the Pokemart lives the Move Deleter, who can delete HM moves from your Pokemon, and in Gen 4 shares this house with the Move Reminder. There is, of course, the Blackthorn Gym that sits in the north of the city, but the most interesting place in Blackthorn is the Dragon's Den. In order to actually obtain the gym badge from Claire, you'll have to do one of two tasks. In Gold and Silver, you'll just need to obtain the Dragon Fang from the den, show it to Claire, and she'll give you the Rising badge. And there are raging whirlpools in this den, so the waters here are a bit dangerous. However, in Crystal and HeartGold and SoulSilver, you'll need to surf down to the Dragon Shrine in the southern part of the den and meet with the master of the Dragon Tamer clan. He will ask the player a series of questions, and if all are answered correctly, the player will receive the Rising Badge, and he'll even gift the player a Dratini. There are 7 siblings that appear in different areas of Johto depending on the day of the week. One of those siblings, Santos, will appear in Blackthorn on Saturdays and will gift the player either a spell tag in Gen 2, Soft Sand in Gen 4, and the Snooze Ribbon if the player has already met all of the siblings. And last but certainly not least, we're going to head further northeast until we reach the Indigo Plateau, nestled in the mountain range between Johto and Kanto, so that we may challenge the Elite Four and champion to become champion ourselves. Okay, after covering each major location for town and city design and aesthetic, I'd have to give Gen 2 a score of 4, Gen 4 gets a score of 5, and Johto overall gets a total score of 4.5. Personally, I think that the distribution of interesting features within the cities and towns of Johto, especially in Generation 2, could have been balanced better. It's pretty obvious that Goldenrod City hosts the majority of the engaging sites and activities, which isn't necessarily an issue. Johto is slowly becoming more modernized, so it's logical for the most noteworthy developments to cluster in the city with the highest population. And frankly, this isn't inherently a bad thing. However, it's disappointing to me that places like Cherry Grove City end up devoid of notable points of interest. In Generation 2, Cyanwood City shares a similar fate, and even in the Gen 4 games, even Mahogany Town and arguably Blackthorn City feel slightly underdeveloped. But to play devil's advocate, let's challenge my own argument for a second. Johto's central theme aims to evoke a sense of rural history while integrating ongoing modernization, and I firmly believe Johto excels in embracing these themes, especially with the aesthetics of the cities and towns, and it's important to consider that smaller locations are designed to exude simplicity and tranquility by deliberately being distanced from the hustle and bustle of the big cities. In the real world, rural towns also ain't got much going on either, so this too aligns with reality. Consequently, it's pretty reasonable to expect that smaller Johto towns and cities may not offer an abundance of activities. However, I'm still going to stand by my initial point and say that I'd still like to see Cherry Grove, Cyanwood, and Mahogany get a little more slice of the pie, and I have some ideas as to how this can be effectively achieved. I think maybe moving the flower shop to Cherry Grove City, you know, the city known for its pretty flowers, would be a great remedy to this situation. I'd simply have the daughter of the flower shop owner give you the squirt bottle after defeating Whitney. She doesn't even have to move from her spot near the Sudowoodo, and this would prevent the player from having to backtrack all the way to Cherry Grove to obtain it. However, if the player wanted the berry pots and the mulch, they might still have to travel back to Cherry Grove, but thankfully, once you've dispatched the Sudowoodo, the trek back there isn't too far or too difficult for that matter. Next, instead of having Camper Todd hold the rooftop sale at the department store in Goldenrod, we could simply have the elderly woman occasionally put her items on sale in Mahogany Town, and maybe even give her the opportunity to sell more unique items as well. At least that would give players a reason to revisit Mahogany Town periodically, and it wouldn't diminish the rural feel of the town. I think Cyanwood City doesn't require too much improvement, especially in Gen 4, since it leads you to an additional area in the game, including the Safari Zone. However, maybe adding like a fishing tournament, similar to the bug catching contest, could be interesting. But significant things do happen in Cyanwood, like an encounter with the legendary Suicune in both Gen 2 and 4. If those few little things were tweaked and added, I could see Johto overall easily nailing a 5 in this category. We could probably make an argument for giving Blackthorn City a little more flair, but I think the Dragon's Den is significant enough to suffice. Generation 2 introduced Johto's themes really well in my opinion, and while the graphics are obviously dated and the aesthetics of some of the towns and cities weren't fully realized until Gen 4, I think the developers absolutely capitalized on the rural, traditional, and historical themes of Johto that they were striving for, despite the technological limitations. And while I can't justify giving Gen 2 a perfect score of 5, it truly deserves every bit of its really decent score of 4 in this category. Generation 4, on the other hand, brought an abundance of new content, and the inclusion of following Pokemon really enhanced the overall atmosphere. While Cherry Grove still stands out as a place without any significant attractions, I won't penalize Gen 4 for it, as it aligns with Johto's rural themes. I'll allow this one city to maintain its simplicity for the sake of thematic consistency. HeartGold and SoulSilver's revamped aesthetics of the towns and cities adds an extra layer of intrigue and beauty to these locations, especially with the inclusion of the Bell Chime Trail in all of its autumn glory. These factors aided in elevating Gen 4's score to a perfect 5. All in all, Johto's cities and towns are truly beautiful, with magnificent traditional architecture juxtaposed with the jam-packed and populous feel of its major cities, embodying a harmonious blend of historical charm and modern innovation. Every city and town in Johto has its own unique allure and is incredibly welcoming. Although not every location calls for a return visit, they all cohesively contribute to the harmony of the region, resulting in Johto receiving a really solid and nearly perfect score of 4.5 in this category. Okay, let's move on now, shall we? Routes, caves, forests, and special interiors. Goodness, we're still towards the beginning of the review, and I still feel like there is so much more to cover. How about we start with the routes? Routes. Once again, I won't be deep diving into every route in Johto, but I will be talking about them generally, and a few will be mentioned specifically. The routes in Johto are in numeric order, starting with Route 29, and in Gen 4, ending with Route 48. Many of the routes are fairly forested with tall grass and small ponds, and often feel as if they have multiple pathways within them. Plus, 13 out of the 19 routes have either ponds, lakes, rivers, ocean, or standing pools of water in them, lending to the wetland feel of Johto. Of course, the routes in Johto act like the routes in any other region. You encounter Pokemon and battle trainers on your journey from point A to point B. However, Johto's routes present additional incentives that encourage you to take a more leisurely approach instead of just rushing straight to the next destination. An example of this would be the introduction of berry and apricorn trees. Berry trees can be found in Gen 2 and are found on many of the routes in Johto alongside apricorn trees. However, these have all been changed to just apricorn trees in Gen 4. Apricorns can be brought to Kurt in Azalea Town, where he will craft the player unique Pokeballs that can't be obtained anywhere else in the region. The majority of the routes have at least one apricorn tree in them, with the exception of routes 32, 34, 40, 41, 47, and 48. Every time I see an apricorn tree, I have to stop and grab the apricorn. I can't help it, okay? And I feel like I'm not exactly alone here either. Not only that, but apricorns come in different colors, so they have a tendency to capture my attention when I'm near one. Plus, the majority of the day of the week siblings appear on routes in Johto, with the exception of Santos, who can be found in Blackthorn on Saturdays, and Wesley, who appears at the Lake of Rage on Wednesdays. For the purposes of this review, the Lake of Rage will be considered a forest, and I'll explain why here shortly. Monica can be found on Route 40 on Mondays. Tuscany can be found on Route 29 on Tuesdays after the player has received the Zephyr badge. Arthur can be found on Route 36 on Thursdays. Frida can be found on Route 32 on Fridays. And Sunny can be found on Route 37 on Sundays. Each sibling will give the player an item the first time they interact with them, and once the player has met all of the siblings in HeartGold and SoulSilver, they'll reward the player with a special ribbon. Numerous routes in Johto offer intriguing places to explore. For instance, on Route 30, you'll come across a resident in a home. In Generation 2, his expertise lies in berries, while in Generation 4, he's well versed in apricorns, even gifting the player an apricorn box to store them. Route 30 is also where Mr. Pokemon lives, and initially the player will need to travel there to meet Professor Oak to receive the Pokedex and obtain an egg to deliver to Professor Elm. Route 31 offers early access to a small portion of Dark Cave. Route 32 contains a bridge where many fishermen come to relax and fish. Route 34 contains the daycare and has large puddles of standing water in it. Route 36 has 5 different paths you can take. Go east and you'll end up in Violet City. Southeast will lead you to the ruins of Alf. Southwest will lead you to Route 35. West will take you to National Park, and going north will lead you to Ecruteak City. It also contains the Pseudo-Wudo blocking the player's path to Ecruteak. There's the Moo Moo Farm on Route 39, and if the player assists the family with their sick mill tank, they'll sell Moo Moo milk to the player for 500 Poke each. In Pokemon Crystal, Route 40 contains the Battle Tower, and in HeartGold and SoulSilver, access to the Battle Frontier. We miss you, Battle Frontier. Never forget. Route 41 offers the infamous Whirl Islands. Route 42 is where the player can encounter Suicune, which I'll go into more depth on later. Route 43 has a gateway building that allows the player to take a little shortcut through the route to get to the Lake of Rage, but it's definitely going to cost you because Team Rocket occupies this building and will force you to pay up 1,000 Poke until their presence is removed from Mahogany Town. Total bull honky. Route 45 is a bit of a scenic route with a large river and multiple waterfalls and access to Dark Cave, and this route, in addition to Dark Cave, will link the player back to Route 46, which connects via a gateway building back to Route 29, the first route in the game. Routes 47 and 48 are only accessible in Gen 4, but they're some of the coolest routes in my opinion. Route 47 is accessible via Cliff Edge Gate in Cyanowood City, and this route is essentially carved out of the cliffs here. Not only that, but Cliff Cave offers multiple access points to the different vertical layers of this route. In addition to Cliff Cave, Route 47 also allows access to the Embedded Tower, which offers an interesting exploratory incentive. Route 48 is cool in that it contains a river that flows into the ocean on Route 47 and contains access to the Safari Zone. Just about every single route has something notable about it, whether it be an apricorn tree, a day of the week sibling, an interesting home or building to visit, or is defined by its scenic beauty. Not to mention, a ton of routes also offer access to caves and other places of interest. The routes often have forking paths, which lends some variety to the way you're able to traverse them, and a very few, if any, routes are lacking interest. But I think that covers my discussion on the routes. Let's move on to the caves. Caves. As mentioned previously, there are 8 different caves in GSC and 10 caves in HGSS. In total, they are Cliff Cave, Cliff Edge Gate, Dark Cave, Dragon's Den, Ice Path, Mount Mortar, Mount Silver, Slowpoke Well, Union Cave, and the Whirl Islands. Whew, Lord Helix, there are so many caves in Johto! But you know what? The good news is that you don't have to spend much time in them. A few of the caves are very small, or at least they don't require significant traversal to get from the entrance to the necessary exit. So get your caving gear on and let's go spelunking, shall we? Let's first talk about Dark Cave, since it's the first that you'll encounter in the game. Dark Cave is a moderately sized cave which is technically split into 2 parts, even though it only has a single floor. And is dark in here!
This isn't your average everyday darkness. This is advanced darkness.
Unless you're a total pro, you'll likely need to teach one of your Pokemon the HM4 Flash in order to get through this cave. The first entry is located on Route 31, and you won't really be able to access the other side of the cave due to the ponds, ledges, breakable rocks, and heavy boulders blocking your way. In fact, only a small portion of Dark Cave is available to the player from this entrance in the beginning of the game. However, the other entrance located on Route 45 is much larger, and by the time you get to that point in the game, you likely already have all the HMs you need to fully explore Dark Cave. Want to know a fun fact? Dark Cave is totally optional. You are never required to traverse this cave in order to beat the game, but there's some nifty stuff here that you might not want to miss out on. Next up is Union Cave, which separates Route 32 and 33, and unlike Dark Cave, you do have to traverse this one in order to get through the game. And Union Cave is also decently sized, though the required traversal in this cave is fairly minimal. There are many pools of water in this cave as well. Interestingly, Union Cave will connect you to the ruins of Alf via an exit on the basement first floor, and the basement second floor contains a neat little exploratory incentive. Next, let's look at Slowpoke Well. This one is a man-made cave that is home to the cherished Slowpoke in Azalea Town. To enter this cave, you'll need some assistance from Kurt, as he will remove the Team Rocket member blocking your entry to the well. But then poor Kurt falls into the well, and you'll have to face Team Rocket on your own. Team Rocket's down there cutting off the tails of these adorable little Slowpoke and trying to turn a profit off of their suffering. And once you've gotten rid of Team Rocket, Azalea seems to become much more lively with Slowpoke all over town. However, you'll likely have to return to the well later if you want to explore the remainder of it, since upon your initial visit, you're lacking the HMs you'll need to do so. There's a large body of water at the bottom of the well, and once again, another exploratory incentive. Then we've got Mount Mortar, which has 3 separate entrances on Route 42. Mount Mortar is a very large cave that acts as a giant maze. That is, when you come back to explore it later, because your initial visit, once again, does not require much traversal to get to the necessary exit. Mount Mortar is also teeming with many small ponds and a fairly large body of water. We've also got a little cave inception going on here, as within Mount Mortar is Waterfall Cave. Not confusing at all, right? Well, if so, that's kind of Mount Mortar's thing. And yeah, the waterfall is absolutely massive and pretty cool looking too. But exploring this cave once you've received all of the HMs necessary to do so can be rewarding, as there are some exploratory incentives here too. Next, we're going to head to the Whirl Islands, an archipelago located on the western side of the region. This underwater cave system is surrounded by raging whirlpools on all sides. The interesting thing about the Whirl Islands is that in SoulSilver, traversal is absolutely necessary. But in Gold, Silver, Crystal, and HeartGold, this area is simply an exploratory incentive. Regardless, the powerful and mesmerizing Lugia resides at the bottom of this cave system. Due to these caves being under the ocean, there is quite a bit of water in them as well. Ice Path is quite an interesting cave. This is the only cave in the region that is icy on the inside, with ice patches covering its floors. As a side note, there are only 2 caves in Johto that don't have bodies of water in them, being Ice Path and Cliff Cave. However, the fact that there is ice in here implies that water would have to exist in this cave as well. Regardless, it is the only cave of its kind in the region. Traversal is necessary, and the cave is fairly large, but it doesn't feel daunting to get through. Maybe it's because you spend so much time ice skating around the place and figuring out its icy little puzzles. Next up is Dragon's Den. This cave is very small and only requires the player to explore it to either find the Dragon Fang in Gold and Silver, or to locate the master of the Dragon Tamer clan to receive it in Crystal and HGSS. This cave is predominantly filled with water and a giant whirlpool on the left side of the cave. You'll definitely want to make sure that you have a slot available in your party so that you may receive the Dratini that the master bestows upon you. Now let's talk about Mount Silver. As mentioned previously, you've got to have all 8 Johto gym badges. You'll have to defeat the Elite Four and the champion and obtain all 8 Kanto gym badges as well before you're allowed entry into this cave. In other words, this one is totally optional, but it's worth it given the exploratory incentives found here. This mountain is the largest in the region. It is treacherous, dangerous, and it exerts its dominance over the border of Johto and Kanto. Mount Silver is divided into several segments, including the cave's first level, the lower mountain side outside the cave on the mountain slope. The second interior level connects to the upper mountain side, the upper mountain side ultimately leading the player to the summit. But at the summit of this vast, treacherous, daunting, and perilous cave lies the mysterious and formidable Red, one of the most challenging and powerful trainers in the Pokemon world. Finally, let's talk about Cliff Edge Gate and Cliff Cave. These two are only available in the Gen 4 games, and both of these caves are very, very small. Cliff Edge Gate can be accessed in Cyanwood City and is literally a tiny cave with a pond of water in it and a steep stone stairway that leads up to Route 47. While Cliff Cave itself is a series of 3 small rooms with ladders that allow the player to access the different tiers of Route 47. Both of these caves are necessary to traverse in order to get to the Safari Zone. Okay, that covers all of the caves. Let's move on to the next portion of this category. Forests. This subcategory is going to be a little wonky wonk, so just bear with me. You may be thinking, well, this portion should go by quickly since there's only one forest in Johto, the Ilex Forest. You said it yourself earlier, Sabrina, so why do you need to complicate it? Well, that's because I need to discuss the Lake of Rage and National Park, right? But they're not exactly routes and aren't numbered like them, and they're clearly not caves or special interiors for that matter. So instead of racking my brain on how to create a 5th subcategory here that would better describe these locations other than just calling them miscellaneous, I'm categorizing them as forests for simplicity's sake. I know they aren't necessarily forests, okay? Though the Lake of Rage do kinda got a foresty vibe about it. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? First, let's talk about the Ilex Forest, located west of Azalea Town. This place is home to a shrine dedicated to Celebi, the guardian of the forest. Unfortunately, unless you're a hacker, you won't find any use for this shrine since the Celebi event is unavailable for both Gen 2 and Gen 4 now, but the shrine is still significant to the history, culture, and lore of Johto, and provides some aesthetic flair to the Ilex Forest as well. This forest is quite dense and fairly large, and you'll need the HM for cut in order to advance through it. One of the residents of Azalea Town needs help capturing his Farfetch'd that keeps running away, and once the player helps this resident, he'll reward the player with the HM for cut. There's also a guy here who will either give you the TM for Headbutt in Gen 2, or will act as a move tutor and can repeatedly teach it to your Pokemon for free in Gen 4. Also in Generation 4, the player's walking Pokemon will also lend a hand in guiding one of the Kimono girls, who has become lost in the forest, back on the right path. The aesthetic of this forest is especially glorious in Gen 4, with patches of sunlight peeking through the trees onto the forest floor. Next, let's talk about the Lake of Rage, north of Mahogany Town, which I suppose could arguably be actually considered a forest, given all of the trees in and around the water. As a matter of fact, in the west and north of the route, there's a forested maze. In Gen 2, you'll need the HM4 cut to navigate it, and in Gen 4, the trees are submerged mostly underwater, so you'll need the HM4 surf in those games. A couple of folks live around this lake as well. The Lake of Rage stands out as a particularly memorable location in Johto, primarily because it offers a guaranteed and obligatory encounter with a shiny Gyarados. This Gyarados is quite significant, not just because it's shiny, but also because it serves as the first shiny Pokemon that a lot of people have ever encountered. But this shiny Gyarados ain't no pushover, as it is totally enraged from the radio waves being emitted from the Team Rocket HQ in Mahogany Town, and has since made the Lake of Rage quite a dangerous place for people to visit. But once the player catches or defeats the Gyarados, things do seem to calm down a little bit here. Finally, let's go over National Park. As I stated earlier, this is not necessarily a forest, it is a park, but it's going here anyway. National Park offers a delightful experience with charming features like a fountain, park benches, vibrant flower beds, and lively visitors bustling about the southern section. In the heart of the park, a grand fountain takes center stage, encircled by grass meticulously shaped like a Pokeball. The park is enclosed by fencing and illuminated by streetlights, enhancing its overall beauty. And let's not forget the bug catching contest happens right here. The park attendants in the surrounding gateway buildings allow folks to join the contest on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Your goal is to catch the strongest bug-type Pokemon, and in return, you might win some cool prizes. Alright, that covers everything in the forest subcategory. Let's move on to the final section of this category. Special Interiors. Remember that Special Interiors refers to the interior locations that act similarly to routes, caves, and forests with Pokemon encounters. The Special Interiors of Johto include Sprout Tower, the Ruins of Alph, the Burn Tower, and the Bell/Tin Tower. Let's start with the Sprout Tower located in Violet City. Interestingly, Sprout Tower tends to sway from side to side and has remarkable flexibility, a feature designed to protect the structure from earthquakes. This architectural technique is known as Jukozo. A popular legend suggests that a colossal 100-foot Bellsprout played a role in crafting the swaying pillar. The ground floor is a place for tourists to visit and study the architecture. As stated earlier, Sprout Tower is managed by monks who train their Bellsprout and Hoothoot here and study and teach the lesson of coexistence through cooperation to its visitors. The player must challenge the Elder of the Sprout Tower sages, Lee, who will test the bonds of the player and their Pokemon, and if defeated, will reward the player with the HM for Flash. Next, let's talk about the Ruins of Alph. There are many scientists in the vicinity that are dedicated to studying the ruins in an attempt to unveil their hidden secrets. It's believed that there is more to these ruins than meets the eye, and the puzzles within the caves likely hold clues to the ancient mysteries of the Ruins of Alph. The only Pokemon that can be encountered here are unknown. Inside the ruins, you'll find 4 small chambers, each containing a slide puzzle. Successfully solving these puzzles triggers the floor beneath you to give way, dropping you into the underground hall of the ruins. These puzzles also summon the unknown here. Each puzzle is associated with a particular subset of the 26 alphabetic forms of unknown, and you'll have to solve all 4 puzzles in order to encounter all of them. However, in order to access each puzzle, you'll need the HMs for Surf, Strength, and Flash, with the upper left entrance and lower left entrance only being accessible via Union Cave. I do want to briefly discuss the Sinjoh Ruins for a moment. The Sinjoh Ruins, only available in Gen 4, are accessible only if the player has obtained a special event Arceus and has it as their walking Pokemon while entering the Ruins of Alph. However, since the Azure Flute was never distributed across the Gen 4 games, this Arceus was never obtainable, and therefore the Sinjoh Ruins was never truly accessible in the games without glitches or hacking. Because of this, and because according to Bulbapedia, the Sinjoh Ruins aren't technically part of Johto, I won't be considering them as part of this review, but I did want to mention them anyway. The same goes for the Tojo Falls in Kanto. Since in order to access this place, the player will need to be in possession of an event celebi that is no longer being given out and can only be accessed by glitches or hacking. Therefore, it too does not really pertain to this review. Okay, moving on to the next special interior, the Burned Tower, formerly known as the Brass Tower in Ecruteak City. The Brass Tower was built alongside the Bell/Tin Tower and used to be just as tall. However, lightning struck the tower 150 years ago and set it ablaze. The charred remains of the tower still stand in Ecruteak today, and the player is required to speak to Morty in the tower in order to progress through the game. This is also the first time that the player will encounter the legendary trio of Johto, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, though they will flee the building once the player has this interaction. The Burn Tower is quite a somber sight to see, with charred pillars and scattered debris, rocks and rubble strewn across the floor, and large holes in the ground where the flames had ravaged the structure. Finally, let's cover the Bell Tower, known as the Tin Tower in Generation 2. The Bell Tower is an iconic symbol of Ecruteak City held in high regard by the people of Johto. However, access to it is restricted to only a select few individuals who are deemed worthy to enter. In Gen 4, the player is granted entry once they obtain the Clear Bell and the Rainbow Wing, whereas in Gen 2, only the Rainbow Wing is required to enter. And in Crystal, the Clear Bell can be used to summon Suicune to the base floor. This massive tower is difficult to scale, as there are 10 floors that must be traversed in order to get to the roof where the legendary Ho-Oh is said to reside. This tower is full of ledge puzzles and warp tiles, and you'll need to have your wits about you if you wish to reach the top. In HeartGold, it is necessary to traverse the Bell Tower. However, in Gold, Silver, Crystal, and SoulSilver, this place is simply an exploratory incentive. Okay, I believe that covers all of the information in this category. Whew, this one was hefty, wasn't it? For routes, caves, forests, and special interiors, I'd have to give Gen 2, Gen 4, and Johto overall a whopping perfect score of 5. Johto offers a diverse range of activities on its routes, from berry gathering to obtaining unique items, from the Day of the Week siblings to encountering legendary Pokemon and exploring charming countryside farms. There's so much to do on them. The routes are also visually appealing, with many featuring multiple paths, ensuring a fresh experience with each visit. The region is packed with caves, but most don't require long and tedious journeys, sparing players from prolonged cave exploration and cave fatigue. Nevertheless, many contain water features and intriguing incentives for return visits, such as legendary Pokemon encounters and other reasons to explore them outside of just getting to the next location. Johto's forests are captivating, even though one in this category is technically a park. The Ilex Forest is densely wooded, leaving you with the feeling that you could easily get lost. The forest shrine here exudes historical charm and tranquility. The Lake of Rage offers exploration in its northern section and a guaranteed encounter with a shiny Gyarados. Finally, the national park is both relaxing and breathtaking, with the added excitement of the bug catching contest. The special interiors of Johto, including Sprout Tower, Ruins of Alph, Burn Tower, and Bell/Tin Tower, hold rich historical significance. Each of them feels unique, and some contribute to the storyline progression. Each adds significance to the region and aligns seamlessly with its themes. Johto hasn't missed a single beat in this category and absolutely deserves an absolutely perfect score of 5 across the board. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for part 1 of the Johto region review. There sure is a ton to cover in Johto, and so far, I've only covered the first 3 categories. There are 7 more categories to discuss, so don't forget to watch part 2 when it comes out, okay? Don't worry, it shouldn't be way too long before I get it to you. but this project was a really large one, and splitting it up made the most sense to me. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed part 1 of the Johto region review, and if you did, please let me know by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. If you want to be notified when I publish part 2 of this review, be sure to tap that bell icon as well, and check into the community tab from time to time, as I'll try and provide updates there too. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to stay tuned in for more. Bye!